Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Talking Freight, the weekly freight series brought to you by Cerasis, a North American 3PL focusing on transportation management solutions for shippers. Don't want to miss a single episode of Talking Freight? Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube channel and hit the little bell. It's a notification that you'll get every time we publish the Talking Freight episodes every Friday. So we pick up where we left off last week. We continue our series on all things capacity crunch by going over today how the ELD mandate and other regulations will impact the capacity crunch. But let's first cover what is the ELD mandate, since it is a new regulatory implementation. The ELD mandate is a portion of the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Bill, which was passed by the United States Congress in 2012. The bill outlines criteria for highway funding and the use of ELDs, or electronic logging devices, for use in a trucker's record of duty status. Today, the record of duty status is used to record compliance with current hours of service, also called HOS, requirements. Although the ELD mandate is a means to tracking hours of service requirements, the two laws are completely different. As a result, the ELD mandate and hours of service regulations may have separate impacts to the capacity crunch, but do know they are intertwined and related. So, when does or did the ELD mandate take effect? As of December 18th, 2017, drivers are required to use an electronic logging device, or ELD, or an automatic onboard recording device, also called an AOBRD, to record their hours of service. After this December 18th, 2017 is Phase 2. Only ELDs may be installed moving forward. At this time, all commercial motor vehicles, or CMVs, must have either a certified ELD or automatic onboard recording device installed. In the mandate's final phase, also known as Phase 3, all CMVs must utilize a registered and ELD compliant solution by no later than December 16th, 2019. So let's talk about that other regulation after the ELD mandate. What about hours of service regulations in the capacity crunch? The capacity crunch revolves around how much available capacity is being used at any given time in the trucking industry. As a result, capacity is directly tied to the number of drivers which may be operating at any given time simultaneously. According to the FMCSA, the hours of service rules are quite specific for property carrying drivers. These include the following. Truckers have an 11-hour driving limit, and truckers may only drive a maximum of 11 hours after 10 consecutive hours off duty. Considering the amount of time required to park a truck, take breaks, and other activities, it is nearly impossible for drivers to get in a full 11 hours of daily driving while still obtaining the 10 required consecutive hours of off-duty. Another point, drivers now also have a 14-hour absolute driving limit for driving after coming on duty, following 10 consecutive hours of off-duty. A third point, drivers must also take breaks and may only drive if 8 hours or less have passed since the end of the driver's last off-duty. And finally, perhaps the biggest impact for the hours of regulation is its specification of how many hours a driver may work within an 8-day period. If the driver drives for 7 consecutive days, a trucker may not drive more than 60 hours on duty in the same period. Similarly, a driver may not drive more than 70 hours within 8 consecutive days. It can only restart after a driver takes 34 or more hours off duty. Considering the hours of service requirements, think about what this means for drivers completing a two-way trip that requires 10 hours each way. The driver may now be limited to only making 14-hour total round trips within a 7-day period. Before the hours of service requirement implementation, the same driver could have successfully completed an extra 2 trips by adding 2.5 hours to the daily driving schedule. However, under the new hours of service guidelines, the number of trips drivers may take, as you can tell, is severely limited. So what's the big picture with hours of service and ELD and the capacity crunch? Well, the hours of service requirements directly revolve around the ELD implementation and vice versa. The ELD will be used to track and monitor drivers' existing adherence to hours of service regulations, so regulations may adversely affect existing trucking capacity. Shippers need to consider how the ELD mandate and hours of regulations will result in a tightening of the existing capacity upon implementation. And even if the impact is not immediate, it will come to fruition this year and in the coming months. Shippers foregoing any knowledge or lack of information about the ELD mandate, well, it could be to their detriment, and if they work with carriers who are not following these rules, well, those carriers could face stiff penalties and other setbacks due to enforcement actions taken by the FMSCA. In short, more oversight requires more time and more planning, especially when it comes to any regulation. Of course, they're just trying to keep everybody safe on the road, and it is important that people stay safe, but it's also important that you understand and look at any regulations and their impact on the capacity crunch. But don't worry, we're gonna have you covered. Every episode of Talking Freight's here to give you as much information you can receive in our short little videos to help you be a little bit better prepared to manage your freight. So that's it for this week's episode of Talking Freight. We continue our series on the capacity crunch, and we'll address a little bit more about issues that are causing this capacity crunch and how you can thrive and do well in any capacity crunch. We're going to give you all the details on how to do that. So don't miss a single episode of Talking Freight. As we said at the beginning, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and after you hit the bell, it's going to ask if you'd like to receive an email notification. Say yes to that too. That makes it just a bit easier for you to catch every episode. Of course, if you subscribe to our blog, we also send these out via email every Saturday. Visit us at cerasis.com/blog. Scroll down a little bit and a little box will pop up where you can put in your email and subscribe to receive our communications. Hey, and while you're at it, make sure you follow us here on social media. We put out a lot of great tweets, we promise. And that's it for Talking Freight. Thanks, and have a great weekend.